Somebody from the underworld woke up to justice and stood up against this legion alone. His name was Sparta. Later, he quietly reigned the human world and continued to preserve harmony until his death. He became a legend, the legendary Dark Knight, Sparta.
Yes, this is necessary. Resident Evil 2 was an incredible sequel and success. Afterwards, director Hideki Kamiya, who made Resident Evil 2, and his superior/mentor Shinji Mikami, who created Resident Evil 1, shifted their focus to a spin-off game where they would put further emphasis on the Mr. X system from Resident Evil 2. A large menace who would follow you throughout your playthrough who was virtually unkillable. The main character called Nemesis, whose name would be used in the title, but unfortunately, Capcom hadn't been making enough money at the time to the point where they were somewhat struggling. So they came up with the idea of calling the game the two had been working on the third Resident Evil in order to push sales, which Kamiya and Mikami actively detested. They swiftly got removed from the project. Not fired, though. See, Resident Evil is now Capcom's #1 series, thanks to these two, and therefore, these two are now viewed as golden. So instead of having them executed, they're sent to work on the next game, Resident Evil 4. Mikami tells Kamiya, "Okay, you might have needed a bit of help with Resident Evil 2, but we both understand what the foundation of Resident Evil is meant to be. Although they are asking us to shake things up a bit and introduce some new ideas, but I believe in you." So Mikami leaves for a few months, and when he gets back, he is confused, frustrated, and stunned all at the same time. Since Kamiya was told to shake things up a little bit, he basically just did whatever he wanted. Just whatever. The next Resident Evil would be about a white-haired redcoat-wearing guy called Tony Redgrave who infected himself with superpowers and dual-wielded pistols and had swords and he fought super mutants, and the game was all about performing combos and seeing how many hits you get without getting hit yourself, and it was all brought together with this over-the-top feel and flow. But most importantly, it was nothing like Resident Evil. Which to me is very funny, because he didn't want to call Nemesis the third game, and that was far less different than whatever this thing was supposed to be. Mikami is confused, rightfully so, because, well, it's not Resident Evil. He's frustrated because, at first glance, this comes across as a massive waste of company time. And stunned because it's not bad. It's not what Kamiya should have been doing, but while what he's making is insane, it's not messy. There's a fairly clear vision for a game here with a fun concept behind it. So Mikami decides to take over development on Resident Evil 4 while actively encouraging Kamiya to continue working on his project, which would develop into what many view as the father of the modern hack and slash.
Let's rock, baby.
Upon release, Devil May Cry received a decent amount of coverage due to its innovative gameplay, but also insane critical acclaim. The game holds a 94 on Metacritic, meaning that from a point of critical reception, it sits among the greatest games ever made. Now, does it deserve to be ranked that highly, especially from a modern perspective? No, not at all. But it's still a really good game, though. Dante, a white-haired and red-coat-wearing guy who's chilling in his cell-phone business, Devil May Cry, is suddenly met by a blonde woman who drives a motorcycle through his wall, then kicks him through a table, impales him, electrifies him, then throws her motorcycle at him, only for him to parry it by shooting it back at her with his dual pistols, Ebony and Ivory. After having proven his strength and abilities, the woman tells him her name is Trish, and she has come here to bring news that Mundus, the ruler of the underworld, has come back to life, and she needs Dante to follow her to a haunted castle on an island in the middle of nowhere so that he can finish off the ruler of the underworld and save the human realm. It's a bit to take in, but it gives you the general idea of what the game is going to be. Cheesy, gothic, and awesome. Which feels weird to say out loud. Because, yeah, you would think that those things would clash and contrast with one another, but it winds up working really well together in this odd harmony. The story throughout is kind of just... Okay, I'm gonna be honest, it's pretty much nothing. It's more of an excuse for the main gameplay loop than anything. The FMVs and character models and cutscenes are about on par with for a game in 2001. The dialogue and the direction for how the dialogue is performed, on the other hand, is iconic for being some of the worst in gaming history. Like, it's Resident Evil 1 bad.
Dante!
Don't come any closer, you devil! You may look like my mother, but you're nowhere close to her. You have no soul. You have the face, but you'll never have her fire!
Like the sky. I feel like my heart is becoming clear.
And you can't forget the most well-known line in the entire series. It might be one of the most well-known lines in gaming history due to how hammy it is.
I should have been the one to fill your dark soul with light!
I'm sorry, but the way it's said was enough to make me laugh. But the line, followed by Dante's expression and anime tears, had me flying backwards in my seat the first time I experienced it. It is way too much. But I don't take that as a bad thing. As I said, the story doesn't really take itself too seriously, and I really enjoyed watching these, even if there weren't that many.
It looks like we have a winner.
Jackpot!
I don't think I was ready for the castle, though. I knew that Devil May Cry was an action game, and I knew that it would be a little corny, but what I didn't know, and was not at all ready for, was how atmospheric it would be. This place feels intimidating, but not necessarily large. First time I found the upgrade music, I admittedly got a little scared by its haunting yet enchanting tone. The halls of the castle look majestic yet abandoned, as if life hasn't existed within these walls for years, possibly even decades. It's almost sad, but your want for adventure takes over as you continue to explore this virtually lifeless castle and find your way to where you need to go. Through wrecked courtyards and dead rooms that seemingly were once full of life, you slowly proceed, even though every new room, due to their age full of cracks and filth, tells you to turn back. But then you have the gameplay. Devil May Cry starts out kind of slow, as there isn't much that you can do initially, except toss enemies in the air and slash them. And yeah, that's the big innovation behind this game, being able to combo your enemies in the air, along with the game encouraging you to hold combos via a ranking system, depending on how many consecutive hits you land in combat. And it's really cool. It is fun trying to rack up combos, though, again, your moveset is rather limited, with only a basic slash, toss-up, slam down, and your ebony and ivory pistols, that, while cool, can't even maintain your combo. You are limited. That is until you unlock Alistor. And this might be one of the best item gain animations ever, purely for the aura alone. Alistor has a forward thrust with post gaps, you can throw it out and watch it spin around, and Devil Trigger. Oh my god. You aren't invincible in Devil Trigger, but you might as well be with how fast and hard you hit, not mentioning its flight ability, which I found insane mileage hit against flying enemies, and especially the bird boss you fight later on. And just before you get that specific boss, you get the Ifrit, which is just a tankier weapon in the form of a pair of fiery gauntlets with an OP Devil Trigger. These were also really fun. The last sword you get in the game is Sparta's sword, the blade of Dante's father, and the sword to originally defeat Mundus himself. I actually didn't like it that much. It's the strongest and farthest reaching Devil Arm in the game, but it can only really activate Devil Trigger on the final boss, so it's sort of just eh. Aside from the Devil Arms, Dante also utilizes a heavy arsenal of guns that I only really liked one of. There's the Nightmare Gun I never use because it takes from Devil Trigger. Ebony and Ivory, while consistent in damage, again, neither carried nor maintained combos. I never realized that there was a shotgun until I noticed one of my inventory slots by the end of the game was still empty. And the needle gun is not only exclusive to, but is the only attack for underwater combat, which isn't that great. The only gun I got any real mileage from, though, is the grenade launcher. The best gun in the game by far for 2 reasons. It's the hardest hitting gun in the game, and because of that, builds Devil Trigger quickly. That and the absurdity of pulling a combo on an enemy and then ending them by tossing them in the air with a sword slash and then blowing them up with a grenade launcher. The weapons in this game are awesome, and nothing feels better than being able to utilize them in the most over-the-top, spectacular way that you can. So, from everything I've said up to this point, I feel like I've made it fairly clear I liked this game. I had a lot of genuine fun with fast-paced action and utility. So now, I have to talk about my least favorite part of Devil May Cry. Resident Evil. This might be a fast-paced action game, but it's also very apparent that it's built off of a slower-paced and much more strategic horror-style game. The puzzles aren't difficult, but still feel kind of intrusive. They're mostly just find an item and bring it to this other part of the map in order to keep going forward. The controls are of a modern game with the camera of Resident Evil. God, I died so many times to bosses, partially because of, at first, I was overly aggressive in a situation that heavily discouraged rushing in, but also because the camera neck snaps perspective, so I could be walking one way and then accidentally jitter backwards or to the side because of a sudden shift in perspective. And I hated this. Aside from those things from Resident Evil, the water segments, as I said, aren't that great. Nightmare can go die in a hole, and sometimes when starting certain enemy encounters, for the sake of immersion, when the cutscene ends with them swinging, you better mash to jump out, or you will be blindsided by completely bullcrap attacks. And this happened a few times, too. Another thing is the geometry of the castle, especially when dealing with this boss, Nello Angelo. Now don't get me wrong, Nello was my favorite boss in the game, especially his final encounter, but his first one has you follow him across different parts of the castle walls, and Nello will attack you frame 1 of getting up there, leading to cheap hits, but regardless, I still found him to be a very well-made boss due to his attacks almost feeling like they're attempting to mirror yours, like a rival battle, which, actually, now that I think back on it, is actually an insanely clever method of foreshadowing in a way that only a game could really ever do. Ultimately, my issues with this game are a bunch of little things, and while a mentality that I usually have with games, that a bunch of little things tend to lead to a larger problem in the big picture, I found myself having more fun with the parts that I liked, with the problems feeling like inconveniences, and minor ones at that. As I said before we got into the game itself, though, while I do think this game is fun, I don't think it's an over 90 on Metacritic. It's great, but it's not polished. If I'm being serious, as a hack and slash, Devil May Cry is beaten by God of War, Bayonetta, Metal Gear Rising, Nier Automata, Transformers Devastation. Heck, according to the community itself, Devil May Cry is beaten by Devil May Cry. But I do think this game is still worth playing past novelty of origin. It's pretty short, with my playtime being just under 6 hours, and it's available on Steam via the Devil May Cry collection, where it's alongside the worst game in the series and the best game in the series. Also goes on sale pretty frequently too, with the collection typically dropping to about $5. Go play this game. It might not be the best game ever made, or even the best hack and slash, but you still have to appreciate the innovation, atmosphere, and the simple, fast, and fun gameplay of Devil May Cry. Devil may not be the single best, but it's still one of the greatest games of all time. Also, yeah, I tried Devil May Cry 2. Don't play Devil May Cry 2.